call to the member for Clark.
Well, thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, much has been said and written about this bill, and I applaud my crossbench colleagues for doing a much better job than I would ever be able to do to explore particularly the legal dimensions of the bill. It is entirely understandable that the speeches that have been given by my colleagues have been needed, because this bill would be a fundamental departure from how Australian law currently operates by removing the right to natural justice. That we would even contemplate that, let alone have a bill before us, it beggars belief. It diminishes our country. But because my colleagues have spoken at such length about such matters, I actually want to focus on some other dimensions of this, perhaps a bit more gritty. I was very pleased the member for Indi spoke about international law, and that's where I'll start my contribution. And that's that if this bill becomes law, Australia will be in clear breach of the Rome Statute. Now, the Rome Statute was a statute agreed upon by our predecessors in this place and ratified by our predecessors in this place when they agreed that the forced removal of someone to a third country is a crime against humanity. That might sound a bit overly dramatic there, Deputy Speaker, but that's what we are contemplating today, to bring into law something that would put Australia, we would stand guilty of crimes against humanity. This is another case of where we think international law should only apply to countries like Russia or China or Syria or Iran. But international law doesn't apply to countries like us, good countries like us. It doesn't apply to the United States, doesn't apply to Israel, doesn't apply to Australia. It only applies to the countries that we want it to apply to. And that is completely and utterly unacceptable. And, Deputy Speaker, that should worry us a lot, because we should be the first country in the world as an important middle power to be advocating for international law and the rule of law, which have served this country so well ever since the end of the Second World War. The other point I'd make, Deputy Speaker, is how this stands to be such a gross misuse of public funds. For a group of about 280 people, for there to be a political fix, and let's face it, the government's in a hole. They've got to do something about this cohort. They're not getting much cooperation from the opposition, who sees everything through the prism of political opportunity. The government's in a hole, so it's going to throw, over a few years, about $2 million of Australian taxpayers' money at each of these approximately 280 people. Well, that's an appalling misuse of public funds. That should alarm us. Even the people who want to be rid of this cohort of people, they should at least be worried about how we're spending this money. And we're going to be giving it to a country which, when I look at a recent Transparency International report, they surveyed Nauruans, and 50% of Nauruans surveyed said that they thought the Prime Minister and their officials in the Nauruan government are likely to be involved in corruption. But yet we're going to hand over $400 million in year one, and I think it's $70 million a year after that, for presumably as long as any of this cohort of people are living in Nauru. That's appalling. In fact, I'd liken it to a form of colonialism, that we even think we have the right to ask the Nauruan government to take these people, and that we are able to bring such financial force to bear to effectively force them to take these people. You know, I'm reminded, Deputy Speaker, in a previous life, probably more than 20 years ago now, I remember reading a cable that came from our top diplomat, or one of the diplomats in Nauru, back to Canberra. And the cable explored all of the money and the assistance that we were pouring into Nauru. And I can still remember the last sentence of that cable more than 20 years ago. And it said, quote, "We have bought Nauru." And you know what? We're doing exactly the same again, Deputy Speaker. I think it is a form of colonialism. Now, listen, Deputy Speaker, I also want to pick up on the point that the member for Ryan made. And the member for Ryan, I think bravely, raised the issue of racism. Now, I note that the comment was withdrawn, but I don't think we should be so quick to— well, I didn't, but I don't think other honourable members should have been so quick to jump on the member for Ryan for floating the idea of, that there's an element of racism here. I put the question back to my colleagues. It's a genuine question. Would we be reacting the same way if this group of people had come from other countries? Now, admittedly, a lot of the other countries would take people back, would accept them being sent back, but not all. If these people in this cohort had come from other countries, would the government, would the community have the same emotional response to them? I think it's a question that needs to be explored,
Deputy Speaker. The member for
Clark
will pause. I believe the member for Wannon has a point of order.
Thanks, Deputy Speaker. And once again, the imputation being made is absolutely horrendous, and I would ask the member to reflect on what he said and to withdraw.
The member for Clark.
Speaker, of course I will withdraw it, but I think these are matters we sometimes should reflect on. Deputy Speaker, I'm not saying that this group of people, and let's face it, there are some very unsavoury people in this group. Mind you, some of them have never been charged or convicted of an offence. Some have been charged and convicted of an offence and they have done their time and deserve a fresh start. Some of them have spent so long in detention in Australia that they have done multiples of the time they might have spent in prison if they ever had been charged and convicted. So, it's not 280 people all out of the same mould. This is quite a diverse group of people, and they are all being dealt with the same blunt instrument. But to the degree that there are some members of this cohort who are unsavoury, they are judged to be a continuing threat to public safety, I'm the first to say they shouldn't be allowed into the community. But there are other ways to deal with those people, rather than shipping them off or flying them off, I suppose, to what I liken to a gulag or a hulk that might have been on the Thames. I mean, I haven't been to Nauru, but I know enough about it to know it is a tiny speck of an island, almost on the equator in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. A hot, dry, harsh place. It's hardy people that live there, the Nauruans, and full marks to them. But it's not where you would send people from this country to get rid of them. It's a horrid place in that regard. But we should be looking for ways to deal with these people ourselves. And, Deputy Speaker, you might remember some years ago now, I tabled a bill that would have ended mandatory and indefinite detention. And that bill that I tabled, advised by human rights lawyers and other people and organisations, even it went to the point of saying if someone is a genuine threat to public safety, then an application could be made to a court, and a court could decide whether that person should continue to be detained. Well, why don't we just do something like that? I mean, instead of shipping our problems off to other countries and giving them almost $500 million, why don't we deal with it ourselves? We are one of the wealthiest, most clever countries in the world. We pride ourselves on being good international citizens that comply with international law. We're proud of the fact that we live by the rule of law in this country. Surely if there's one country in the world that can set the example on how to deal with this, it's us. And, I don't mind if the government and the opposition pull out my old bill on that would end mandatory and indefinite detention and go to the relevant part. They can lift it, they can use it. I'd be delighted if they copied it. And instead of these 280 people just being treated as a job lot, go through them one by one, work out what the best solution, the best outcome is for each and every one of them. And for those that do need to be kept in detention, then we should frame our laws that allow a court to make that decision. I think, Deputy Speaker, that would be the humane, legal and decent way to respond to this. And that would send a signal to people who might seek to come to this country by irregular means. Because let's face it, our so-called border security policies, I'd call it our irregular immigration policies, they are based on punishment and deterrence. They've been that way probably ever since A Labor government introduced mandatory detention decades ago. I think it might have been the Hawke government, if memory serves me correctly. So no side of politics has clean hands here, no side at all. In fact, I think the only people who have got clean hands in this place at the moment is the crossbench, who are fighting for natural justice, are fighting for the rule of law, are fighting for adherence to international law, and to act as a decent country with integrity. But what we've got instead is just this political fix. A political fix because the government's in a hole. They're in a hole because they've got to do something with this group of people. They've got the opposition on their back, who never miss an opportunity to try and score political points when it comes to irregular immigration to this country. So we're going to ram this through with a bill of $400 million in the first year for 280-odd people, and $70 million a year every year thereafter, I assume, until there's none of the 280 left. This is an appalling turn of events, Deputy Speaker. I certainly won't be supporting this bill. I will be happy to support another bill that might be brought to this place that would seek to come up with a humane, decent and principled way to deal with this cohort of people, one that would look at each case on a case-by-case basis and ensure that there is some mechanism like a court making a decision on ongoing detention for anyone who is genuinely a threat to public safety. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.